Urbanski, and welcome to the Best Business Podcast. My mission is to help create 200 new multi-millionaire business owners. How? You'll do better when you know better. In my interviews, you'll hear from self-made millionaires, seven-figure business owners, authors, and world-class experts sharing how they did it so you can too without experiencing the same obstacles they did. Now, if you like this interview, please share it with a friend you think will benefit. They'll appreciate it, and I will as well. You can also connect with me on social media. Look for Daryl Urbanski, D-A-R-Y-L, Urban Ski, U-R-B-A-N-S-K-I, and add me so we can be friends. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy what I've prepared for you right here, right now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Daryl Urbanski, your host as always, and today we are joined by a repeat guest and very dear friend, Micah Mitchell. Mike has been growing and automating online businesses since I was first figuring out HTML. And these days, he's helping businesses and membership site owners around the world grow more successful membership programs. Founder and CEO of Memberium, a tool for membership sites with WordPress finally made easy, it is the go-to solution for WordPress membership sites using Infusionsoft or ActiveCampaign to help manage their members. Now, before we get started, I also want to take a second to mention if anyone out there is tired of the never-ending content creation demands of a membership site, or worried about keeping up with the production schedule, and if that's holding you back from getting going, go to memberium.com right now, memberium.com right now, and at the bottom of the homepage, you'll see their free report, 9 ways to add more value to your membership site without having to create more content. I've asked Micah to join us here today because no matter what business you're in, you can only do better by being community-minded and membership-focused. So, Micah, thank you for joining us, my friend. How are you?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk to you, Daryl.
I know. Well, people don't know is we already talked for like an hour before we hit record. We're like, wait, we should do this podcast thing, shouldn't we? Yeah, let's get it going. So.
Exactly.
But I mean, you got so much value to give. And, you know, we talked a bit before about being inch wide, mile deep and the value of focus. In fact, I got that acronym from you, follow one course until successful. And I just love it. And you're such a good role model of that. And you've been just driving things home with membership sites. You're really becoming the kind of the kingpin of and like the godfather of membership stuff to the point where major companies are wanting to get you involved in helping them out and get their things up and running. And I think there's just a ton of value to give because so many businesses, I mean, even if it's not an online membership site, even a restaurant would benefit from having a membership program of some sort. It's just such a fundamental principle of business success, like build a community around you and nurture and grow that community. So I think this is going to be a great call for everyone that's listened in. They may want to check out our other interviews as well, because you just can't be too much of an expert. So Micah, what's kind of new and happening in the membership world? Like, what are some of the major developments that you see or trends you see going on with a lot of your clients and customers?
So, the membership world, it's kind of funny because people have been selling content for a while and it goes through these, I would almost call them cycles, where it's kind of really popular and then it dulls down a little bit. A year or two ago, we had the learning management systems come out like LearnDash, where people can track their progress. And that was big. And then there's not been a ton of, super new things, but there is one thing that we had requested so much, we built a feature, and now we're starting to see that feature in other people's softwares as well. And I don't know if their clients are requesting it or, if they're copying from us or whatever, because we've kind of pushed it. But we call it parent-child access or maybe umbrella account access. And it's where one membership, like you buy a membership and you log in and you're actually able to add other people onto the membership. So for example, a business owner buys a membership and they log in and then they can add their team to train under them. Because in the past, what they would do is they'd buy, for example, I've even done this where I buy a membership as the business owner. I don't really want to go through all that content. And so I give my login to one of my team members and I say, hey, go through this. Well, this new thing with parent-child, it lets you add sub-members basically underneath you. So, so I can buy a membership and then say, hey, I want my secretary to take these trainings and I want my sales team to take those trainings and support to take these trainings. And the cool thing about it is when you combine that with the learning management system stuff, each person has their own tracking. So instead of them logging into your account and marking a video as watched that you actually haven't watched yet, they log into their own account, which is a sub-account of yours. They do whatever they're going to do, and it's all tracked specifically just for them. So all the quizzes, all the completion tracking. That way you can actually, as the business owner, look and see, hey, what are they doing? How far did they get? So that's I
Really
think the big
powerful.
thing, yeah, and it's really given it like a third or a fourth dimension where it used to just be how much content can you have and how much can you gamify it, and now it's like no, how can we make one membership actually multiply for
Mm.
multiple members, and some of them even being different based on their position. So that's really, I would say, probably the most exciting thing.
That is really exciting. Now, I want to bring it back to a really fundamental question for anyone that's listening to this and hasn't listened to our other interviews yet, and just talk about why, like, isn't there so much free information out there? Why would anyone pay for information these days? Like, why would you pay for a membership program or site of some sort if you can just Google it and find it free somehow?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I actually love free training. I don't mind going and watching some YouTube videos. But whenever I get serious about something, I'll actually go and actively look for a course, because I know the difference between a YouTube video or a series of videos or whatever and a course is that the person creating the course had, or usually, and if it's a good course, they have an intention or an outcome in mind for you where you can kind of go from point A to whatever point Z, through the process of that course. Whereas, in my research, at least on YouTube, when I'm going and learning about stuff, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of redundancy. You also don't quite know who to trust, who's telling the
Mm.
truth. So I would say buying into a course, you're going to get a much more organized set of information that you can go through and retain and put to use better, and it depends on the subject. But to me, it's like, yeah, that's definitely worth some money. If the course creator does their job well,
Hmm.
it's worth it for me in time to save.
That's awesome. Now, are there any types, if there's anyone that's out there that's got a membership program going, or they're even thinking of starting one, do you see certain types of membership programs having higher success rates than others? I don't know if that's the best way to phrase that question, but hopefully you get what I mean.
I do, yeah. And it's interesting. I was talking to somebody, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and they are really high up in the gymnastics world in the US. And it was super interesting because they have like one of the best coaches as a partner who creates the content. They're an internet marketer. They're kind of in that dream position that a lot of marketing consultants want to be in, where they're partnered with a content specialist.
Hmm.
And she was just kind of saying, well, at the end of the day, we just can't make that much money out of it. Like youth gymnastics or gymnastics in general, that type of training through a membership site. And she's been at it for a long time. And ultimately, just to, give the spoiler at the end, we did find a way, and I did encourage her to go deeper with it. But what I took from that afterward, as I was thinking about it, is the B2C world, consumers are not as likely to pay. B2B, a lot of them are doing really well, because for business, even if you go spend $1,000 on a course, you don't need too many nuggets. And I know you know this, Daryl, because we've been in masterminds and stuff
Hmm.
together. One idea can be worth way more than you paid for the course. And so I'd say B2B generally has, people are going to get an ROI on that. And so they're much more likely to try things, buy things. They're willing to spend a little more. It's not a hard and fast rule, but I'd say that is one of the basic principles.
Right. Yeah. If you can validate and prove an ROI on the investment, it makes it kind of a no-brainer. And it can be, again, in business. I mean, if I can, for a lot of people, depending how much your course is priced, it's $100, it's $200, it's $500, it's $1,000. How many new customers do you have to be able to help that person keep or get in order to make it worth their while? So I get what you mean by that as being a really powerful argument. What do you see? Because now you've helped like thousands. I mean, how many active sites do you have? You don't mind me asking under Memberium right now?
I don't know the total number, but I'd guess, I know it was over 3,000 months ago. So probably between 3 and 4, could be over 4,000.
Right, which is huge. And I mean, between those sites, is it how many people? Like how many seats? Like how many like? I know Dave.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I know he's always counting it. And again, last time I had looked at that, it was about 8 million. So it could be over 10 these days. I don't know.
so over 10 million active users using your software. That's a lot of data to be collecting and combing through and looking at. When you go through these sites, do you feel that there's a lot of bottlenecks or phases or stages that people go through with their membership site?
Yeah, actually. So speaking of stages, and I don't think we've ever talked about this, but
No.
this last summer I was freaking out a little bit because I had a live event and I had all these membership site owners coming in. And I was like, I got to figure out something to give these people, like something new and exciting. And it kind of came last minute, but it fit so well. And so since then I've been kind of working on and refining this concept. But basically, if you don't mind me, and I'll dive into it a little bit, but there's these 4 stages that we've identified.
Okay.
And so the first stage is infancy, and that's where they have 0. So there's a number on each stage. And I got this idea, the concept, I borrowed it from the book Ready, Fire, Aim. And I'm sure they borrowed it from probably somewhere else. But in stage 1 in infancy, you're between 0 and 10 membership billings per month. So whether that's a monthly member or a one-time fee, whatever, just between 0 and 10 billings related to your membership site or course per month. And so the main challenge there is you got to build the site. You don't know if it's going to sell. You got to build your initial sales messaging and so forth. And the big opportunity is that if you can get a really basic site built and you can get a sales letter to convert, you get proof of concept. And so what most people don't realize, and I'll go through the stages and then come back to this, but the reason most membership sites that don't do well, the reason they fail is because they're doing stuff at the wrong stage. And always before, there wasn't a lens to view this through or something to measure it against. People would just see another membership site and they'd say, oh, I want to do what that guy's doing. And so they'd go try to build a community onto their site because that guy did it. Or they'd, try to gamify it to death because somebody else did.
Right.
Yeah, and they'd get way ahead of themselves because if you don't have a couple members or your concept isn't proven, at least at a minimum, you could waste a lot of money. And I've met a lot of people, I'm sure you have too, who have wasted a lot of money and then found, hey, this doesn't sell as well as I thought it would. So that's kind of that infancy stage is just to kind of prove concept and get the site built. And most people's challenge there is technical. Like they got to learn how to build a site because it's their first site. They got to develop content. And then they have to know how to sell a little bit. But once you get out of infancy, the next stage, childhood, is between 10 and 100. And this is where your main thing, and this is basically the one people skip the most, the only thing you focus on in childhood is sales. So if you get a basic concept up in infancy, you don't go start improving it. You don't say, hey, this is, it works. Let me go add more content or more features for my customers. Let me increase the value of what they're buying, right? That's what most people think. But the reality is, no, you really haven't proven the concept. And if you can't get up to 100 billings a month, you shouldn't be doing this because at most fees, even up to, let's say, 97 a month, that's only 10,000 a month. And if you're running a site and a CRM and some marketing software and some hosting and, you've invested your own time into it, you want to make a little bit more, right? So at least you want to get to that 100. So basically in childhood, it's between 10 and 100. And the biggest challenge is sales. And the biggest opportunity is if you can get a sales message that works, like something direct response or evergreen that, hey, this works consistently and can get you over 100 members, then you go to the third stage, which is adolescence. And this is between 100 and 500. And in adolescence, this is where you're really going to do what you want to do, which is improve the user experience. This is where the number one issue. So, in the first stage, you don't know what you're doing. That's the challenge. The second stage, getting sales and leads, is the challenge. The third stage, it's like, okay, I got over 100 a month in billings here, meaning 100 separate billings, whichever they may come from. But at this stage, then your problem becomes retention, because now that you can get customers, can you keep them? And so that's why now it's like, okay, now gamify, now add a community, now do all the things that so many membership site people will preach to you, but they don't tell you, don't do this in the beginning. And that's where it's like, no, you got to wait until you have enough sales coming in. Then when you go optimize the system and you learn how to keep people longer, you've got a steady flow of customers and the business starts to accumulate versus just kind of spin the wheels.
I love that, because a lot of people in their business, especially, and I want to point this out because I think this is a really important point, like there has to be a steady flow in your business. Like there has to be lead flow. There's so many people that are caught in a feast and famine mode with their business. And a lot of times it's because the person that's delivering the product or service is also the one that's getting new clients. And it's so powerful and important to be able to have both functions operate interdependently, so there is a steady flow of new people because of that exact reason. So whether you're an agency and you're going from onboarding new clients and taking care of them versus getting new clients to onboard, or whatever that business is, I love what you're saying here is like, let's make sure there's a river of flow before you go through all this headache and hassle to build all these operations and systems and invest all this time, energy, and money in optimizing things. Make sure that this is not going to go away anytime soon, right? Like if you can get to 100 sales per month or 100 recurring member subscribers, and you can maintain that because there'll always be attrition, right? That's the big goal first. That gives you a volume and a mass enough to test, to be able to see meaningful movements. And if you can't get there, is that really what you want to spend the next 5, 10, 15 years of your life building around? Even if your plan is to sell it, it's probably not going to happen in less than 5 years, right? Depending on what stage you're at. And so I just love that you're talking about that, like just get the river flowing, because so many businesses don't even think about that. And it's such a reactionary thing. And I just wanted to stop to point that out for any audience listeners that kind of grazed over them. Like Mike has already fleshed out 3 stages, and the very first is a minimum viable product and a proof of concept sales pitch. And then it's scaling that to where you have a repeatable, scalable, and ideally automated. And automated doesn't necessarily mean all machinery, but you've got training programs, systems, and key staff in place to do it. So you as the owner are not the one focused on that. And you can scale that up to something that's meaningful. Here, 100 sales or 100 recurring payments per month. And then the focus is on retention and scaling it to 500. Did I get that correct, Micah?
You did, yeah.
Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect. Okay, sorry, now go from there. So we're at adolescence. What happens now?
Yeah, so in adolescence, you basically keep improving it, and you can always obviously improve the second stage as well, the sales. But part of the reason, just to touch back on it, part of the reason I'm so adamant about people not moving on until they hit 100 is like you said, it's not really worth your time until you get there. But also, most people underestimate how hard it really is to work on their sales funnel. I mean, especially I've found membership site people, content creators who are specialists in an area, which is why they're even thinking of starting a site. They're usually not salespeople. And so getting them to really buckle down and work on that is important because, then they'll find out. If it doesn't work, if you can't get to 100, just like you said, it's probably time to bail. And thank goodness you didn't go do all that other stuff. But after stage 3, so after adolescence, now you're saying, okay, I've passed 500, which means I've learned to get them, I've learned to keep them. Then 500 and above is maturity, and this is where actually your focus shifts to building new products, building upsells, starting a mastermind, building downsells, basically creating more products. And again, most people get ahead of themselves. They listen to some guru and they think, oh, I need this whole universe of products in order to make this work, and they go start building them without anything yet working. And so it's kind of, if you do these things in order, it's like, okay, now I have 500 plus customers. If I go build another product, chances are I'm going to be able to sell a few of them to these 500 people who are already paying me. So at that point, it becomes really profitable to start a mastermind. But, you've probably seen this too. I know I've talked to several people who try to start a mastermind and they just don't have enough of a pool to draw on. Even if they're pretty popular, if they don't have a paying customer base who they can quote, upgrade into the mastermind versus just sell it from scratch, it becomes pretty hard. So, stage 4, basically the big challenge is creating new products and learning to upsell and cross-sell. And the big opportunity is you can increase the value of every single customer coming in. And so once you're through stage 4, then you can repeat all you want, build another product, start at stage 1 with another product, or improve sales, whatever you want to do. But like I said, most people fail because they're doing the stuff from the other stages in the wrong stage.
And what I love about just this model that you gave is that we both know Brad Martineau, and one of the things that when I had him on this show, another great interview, was he gave me this quote. I love it all the time. He says, when you look up entrepreneur in the dictionary, it says a person who organizes a business or businesses. What it doesn't say is the person who answers the phone, mops the floor, cleans the toilet, does the taxes, makes a sale, delivers a service. It's not that one person that does everything. And the model that you just fleshed out, it's like getting something up, running, scaling, kind of operating on its own, and then you can repeat it. And what I love is, like you mentioned, cross-selling. So maybe you get to maturity with your first product. You get past adolescence, you're doing 500 plus billings per month. For this product, and now you go, okay, I'm going to launch this new product, and that can feed, and if you're smart, there's a way and a bridge between what you're selling, so there's some sort of transference between them where customers can jump from one product to the other or graduate from one to the other, but you still kind of build that one maybe as an independent silo, so that way they each, you have some diversity happening, and diversity leads to stability, to now where you're building a business that's got 1, 2, 3 legs of income, right? 3 legs of customers that's sharing between all of them. And if you go through this process and all, I just think it's a really powerful method, especially because the big focus on getting the scalable, repeatable sales process, in the childhood, because that's, you just need to have that happening. If maybe you would say something different if stage 1 and 2 are, mostly sales and minimum viable product, but if you're getting more than 20% refunds or, 12% refunds, or I don't know, if you're getting death threats, go ahead and
Yeah.
like, what would you say would be something reasonable to tell someone, whether it's because as the owner, any refunds feel like too many, especially if you're new and starting out.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought this up because a couple of things. One, this is a little industry dependent. Not every industry is going to hit on these exact numbers. They're kind of more rule of thumb.
Sure.
And two, it depends on the entrepreneur. It depends on their budget, whether they've done any of this before, how well known they are in the industry. Because, for example, when I go out and start a site, I do make some calculated choices. For example, I launched a membership last year, and I decided in the beginning, no, we're not going to start with a community. No, we're not going to start with a couple of these things, including even the high level of gamification. And I know the site's going to work. I've done all this a million times. I have staff, I can pay to get it all done. Even then, I pretty much followed my own rules. And now, we got like 200 sales kind of right away. And so it's like, okay, now we can work on retention. But I wasn't 100% sure we'd get them, and I don't think we would have gotten them if we would have gotten ahead of ourselves because we spent a long time on sales. So what I would say is these are a little, general. You don't have to wait until exactly 100. But yeah, to your point about the refunds or a really, product that just isn't hitting, obviously that could be a couple things. It could be that your sales message is off. It doesn't match the product. But if the product's really just bad, back up and fix. I would say you're kind of back in stage 1. If you're getting 10 sales, but 1 or 2 are refunding, well, you're really getting 8 or 9 sales.
Right.
So I would only count the sales that stick, I guess, is part of that. And also, if you're anything above maybe 5 or 10% refunds, question, did you really prove the concept here, or are you just a really good salesperson and it doesn't match the product?
Right. That's perfect. And that's exactly what I want. Just some sort of rule of thumb for people. Because people that can't be afraid of getting refunds. Your product's not for everyone. And in fact, I know that the late, great Gary Halbert even said, if you're not getting some refunds, you're probably not selling your product hard enough. There's people that would benefit from your product that you're not trying hard enough to convince, for fear of upsetting someone. And it's not no skin off your back, just give them the refund, just have ethical business practices. And it's okay for someone to try something out and not like it, not want it, and that's where I've asked for that rule just to help, because I know for business owners, it can be difficult to separate the two. So now that's fantastic. So let's just do a quick recap for that. Again, people listening, I hope you got a pen to write her down. We had infancy, childhood, adolescence, maturity. Infancy, proof concept, get sales, make your basic site. Childhood, that's just sales in a scalable, repeatable process. And then adolescence is 100 to 500 billings per month. And Micah, is this true whether, no matter the price point of your product, whether it's a $50 course or it's a $50 a month course or it's a $500 a month course or $500 one-time fee course? You just want because you're very specific, and that's kind of what I want to ask about is, because it's easier for people to be successful with these goals, perhaps, if it's a recurring bill, but you kind of lump them together. It doesn't matter if it's a one-time fee or a monthly fee. You want this many billings per month. And I just want to ask kind of what's your reasoning for that?
There's a couple things. One is you want to, it's like if you survey 10 people, you can't really trust those results as well as if you survey 100. So you want a big enough sample size of just people, regardless of how much money they have. But it definitely does vary based on the industry and whatnot, and budgets and experience and all that, like I said. But I would say that, it is really more based on sample size. And especially if you look at maturity, where we're going to say, hey, let's upsell a higher level product and make more money. Well, even if you have 50 people paying you a good amount of money, if you can only convert 10%, if you can only convert 5 of those people into the next level, is it worth it? And if the answer is, yes, or 5%, 2.5 people, is it worth it? So you can kind of extrapolate the numbers and decide, is it worth it? But the reason is it's like any business, and we're not talking huge numbers, right? Like 10, 100, 500. And so it's like any business, even if you have a slightly higher price point, I'd say it's a pretty safe, pretty safe rule of thumb. And again, if you are super stoked because you're charging $1,000 a month and you get 100 people and you're at $100,000 a month, heck, I'd go for an upsell before I get too crazy, So yeah, it will vary, but most people, where they're in that 100-ish range or sub 100 range on their billings,
Yep.
That's really who I've got in mind. And then the higher level, you could probably cut some of those numbers in half.
Sure. No, of course. And again, it is a bit by feel, but I think this is a great rule of thumb. Now, we beat the drum about building a team a lot here on the show. And I want to ask, in your experience, are there certain key members that a person should have? Maybe they already have a site up and running, but they're kind of a one-man show or one-woman show, or maybe they're not and they have a team. Is there like an outline? Of course, it's going to depend on industry and skill set and that, but generally speaking, are there certain roles that you've found as kind of fundamental across all different types of membership businesses?
That's a really interesting question, because so many of these people I know really well, and they talk to me about their employee issues and things like that. And I've kind of seen two basic patterns. Either people will get someone like them to take work off their own plate, or they'll get someone who's the opposite of them to complement them, right? To take care of the stuff that is in their weakness. And the way that I would look at it, if I was starting a membership site today, is I would try to at least get through infancy myself, through a little self-study. And 5 years ago, I wouldn't have said that because the technology was too hard. But nowadays, it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a million ways to build this with no technical experience. You can just go with a product that's easier, right?
Right, like Memberium.
yeah, and I don't even mind saying other things. I'm saying, like, if Memberium's too hard for you, go to like Udemy or whatever, just make it happen. But I'd say, yeah, the people who you've got to have, to me, or at least I should say for me, because of my personality type, I need somebody who's a finisher, and I need someone who's a J, like very judging, very rule-based, very on top of things. I need that person to complement me, because if I get somebody just like me, we're going to both have the same problem. It's not going to be great. But I have seen other people who they hire a clone of themselves, and then they kind of just work through the clone, right? They provide maybe the voice or the face, and then they tell the other person to do all the stuff that they can do, but they're just trying to scale. So probably a better way to answer this is, I would say, get to know yourself a little bit more. Like, do as many self-profiling things as you can to understand yourself and the other personality types that are available, and then just make that decision. Like, do you want another one of you, or do you want the opposite of you? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like in relationships, like romantic relationships or whatever. If you have someone who's too much like you, that can be really good in a lot of ways. But then when you guys face a challenge that's neither one of your strengths, it can be really hard. And the flip side is, if you're the opposite, you complement each other really well. But when you're off, you're really far off.
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. So now what about the retention part? So we talked about is there a preferred method for getting sales? Let's kind of walk through that, because I'm trying to make this complete, because I know you've got the goods, and I know that this call can be life-changing for a lot of the listeners here. So I want to make sure I go through them all. But yeah, in getting the sales process up, for anyone that is stuck in infancy or childhood, or even in adolescence and in the early stages of adolescence, because I know it's mostly about retention, but how would you sell a membership program? I've heard people say, like, you can't sell subscription, or it's harder to sell subscription than someone else. Some people, like, if you got to sell subscription, you got to use premiums, or something like that. You're like, what do you, through all the membership sites you've seen, what are some common rules of thumb that you would recommend for the audience?
Yeah, it's so interesting, because there's so many different people, and I want to make sure and articulate this properly so I don't injure someone, Yeah,
no, that's fine. But even just like, is a sales page versus a video sales letter versus a phone call versus a webinar, is there go.
No, thank you. Yeah, that helps me out, actually. So in the very first stage, I encourage people in infancy, I encourage them to just write a basic sales letter. And if they don't know about direct response copywriting, to go get something, John Carlton, whoever, go study that stuff. Even if that's not your strength, you're never going to make it if you don't study that stuff. Or you can pay through the nose for someone who's really good at it. But I say that because usually the content person, they are a good salesperson in person, right? They can sell anybody who's standing next to them because they're the expert. But translating that into a sales letter is such a huge skill. And the sales letter is kind of the basic piece. If you want to run a webinar, if you want to make a video, if you want to do any of these other things, none of them are going to work if you can't write a sales letter, if you don't know the basics, right? And so in infancy, I tell people, you're going for a sales letter. Don't get fancy, because if you can't get that sales letter to work, at least to a degree, you can lower the price to $1, but if you can't get that sales letter to work at any price, you're not going to get the other mediums to work. As soon as you get out of infancy, and I say that partially so they don't get lost in the technical and all the rest of these other ways you can sell. In infancy, that's where I say, hey, you have, not in infancy, sorry, in adolescence, when they have over 10 people billing a month, that's when I say, now try every single medium you can. So all the things you just mentioned, do them all. You have your sales letter already. All you're doing in this stage anyway is just selling. Turn it into a video, turn it into a webinar, create more lead magnets, find more partners who you can, interview, or they can interview you. And that's, I would say, one of the bigger things too, is as soon as you get a couple direct response pieces, and saying this to someone who's never done it, it kind of seems a little flippant, like, oh yeah, you say it's easy, but it doesn't seem easy from here. But it's kind of like you have to have enough faith to get that sales letter done, because then another door opens and you can build a couple more things. And once you've done that, another door opens, meaning once you have a couple little pieces in place, that's when I would say interview everyone in your space. Most people are not going to say no to an interview. So you say, hey, can I interview you? Hey, can I interview you? Pretty much they're all going to say yes. And you can create all this content and all these relationships and all this exposure, because many of them, when you post that interview, will contact their list and say, hey, I was just interviewed by so-and-so, here's a link to it. And so, from a traffic perspective, I like in the membership space, interviewing other people and obviously getting on as many of their shows as you possibly can. But if you're just getting started, that's the best way. Ask if you can interview them. And but if you're going into all these mediums, like I said, videos, webinars, whatever, and just do one at a time. You don't have to jump off on all of them, but you keep doing one at a time, and you keep building influence by interacting with the people in your space until you get over 100. And by that time, usually you've got enough pieces in place and momentum. That's usually what gets people there. It's not like most people don't hit a home run, by hiring someone to make them a sales video or hiring someone else to write them a sales page. It occasionally happens, but usually I would say, if you're just getting started, learn direct response. And the reason I say that, and I would encourage people so strongly to do that, is, one, I know most of them don't know it. Even there's somebody who I've known for a long time. You might have been in a mastermind with them at one point, but they were showing me all the cool stuff they were doing and all these different things. And I just said to her, okay, that's great. Can I challenge you a little? And she was like, yeah, she's a pretty spunky lady. And I was like, I don't want you doing any of that stuff anymore. None of it. You can't do it. You got to hand it off to your lady. And she had someone who was like her, someone she was training. I said, that's that person's job from now on. All you can do is sales. That's the only thing you can do for the next 30 days is sales. So copywriting, marketing, sales, any book, any course, anything you can try, that's all you get to do. And I told her if she did that I'd talk to her again in 2 weeks, and then I'd talk to her again in another 2 weeks. And she was good enough to go kind of chase it down. And it really changed their whole business, because always she was such the technical person. She thought she was an entrepreneur, but she really just liked doing everything herself, to your thing, like Brad says. And I love when he talks about that. It's getting her to shift into a sales mindset. It's like, look, you're already the expert. You're not going to lose that by becoming a salesperson. But if you're an expert who can sell, now you're going to kill it.
Very well said. Very, very, very well said. And I love that. That's a really good format too, because if you get the basic sales letter done, you have all the pieces you need for anything else that you would do. But it'd be really hard to do a webinar and not know where you lost people. So awesome. And again, I'm sure everyone listening to this definitely sees the value in this call. Let me ask about the one last piece that I think is really important to this, and probably the only other thing we could get done in this call today, and that would be the retention part. Community building. How do you create an engaged community? How do you retain people? Is there any kind of fundamental pillars or foundations that anyone with any type of business should really consider?
Yeah, so community is a huge one because a lot of people will stick around just because they feel like they're in the right spot.
Mhm.
Um, Meaning they want to be involved, they want to feel in touch and kind of on the edge versus behind. And so if you create the way to create that anyways, obviously is, with the community and with your content, but the community piece in particular, if you're going to go that way, obviously wait until adolescence. I'm sorry, wait
Mhm.
until you're far enough along, because otherwise your community is going to be a ghost town. And
Mhm.
that's most people's problem is they can build the most technically advanced community with all these cool features and notifications and peer-to-peer stuff, but if there's nobody in there, it doesn't work. And so one thing I'd say is wait a little bit before you start it, or there's a other side to that. But if you wait until you start it, then you can start it with a bang. You invite everybody in, and then you yourself as the leader need to lead that community for the first while. And like I said,
Mhm.
I started a site last year, chose not to put a community in because I knew I wasn't up to conversing with them for the first while to get that thing going. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to wait so that when we do start it, I'll already have some content planned. And there's a couple examples. So I was doing a case study with a client, and it was a lady who kind of manages the website and the marketing for her husband. So her husband is the content expert, and I'm on this case study with her, and their site's not, they don't have too many members yet, but she's showing it to me, and their community is super active. Like I'm watching it, and I'm seeing the notifications come up, like 1 minute ago, so-and-so did this kind of stuff. And so I asked her, I was like, what is the deal here? You don't, I mean, they barely have like 100 members. And she said, well, my husband, he decided that for the first 100 days after launching the site, he was going to basically start a topic of conversation every day for the first 100 days and actually go back and forth with people. Not all day, but he was going to respond to the people who responded to him posting every single day. So he kind of took the lead for the first 100 days to get the community going, and then he left it alone and they just kept going. So that's one thing, is you can kick it off. You don't have to stay there forever, but I say in the beginning, you got to be heavily involved, because they frankly don't want to talk to your team. They know
Mhm.
you. Like if you're the personality and the salesperson, they're going to flip out if they get access to you and can talk to you. That's kind of, what they really wanted. They didn't want
Mhm.
your content. They wanted to ask you all their personal questions without having to do any work. So, right. So you kicking it off is a big deal. And another thing, and so this is the way around having to wait all the way until adolescence to do it. And that is, you can create a free community within your site. So the community can be free, not a member benefit, at least initially. And you can have your content separate, right? So you can kind of have both. And the reason I say free is it's a lot easier to get more people into there.
Mhm.
So I've seen a few people do, hey, the community part is free. I'm doing that to kind of build up mass. And then the courses are on the side of it. And obviously they kind of market it through their community. And another way, and this was, I thought, pretty clever, a client of mine, when they first were going to roll out their membership, it wasn't their first site, so they kind of had a following and some customers, but they basically said, hey, it's going to be whatever it was, like $40 a month. But we're going to have a one-time offer of 40, the monthly fee is going to be the lifetime fee until we get our first, I think it was 500 or so members. And so they did that, and it's like, well, they're throwing away money, but at the same time, they front-loaded their community with 500 raving fans who are going to love them forever, and they're never going to cancel because they bought a lifetime fee. So instead of the early turnover most communities have, they have a built-in, basically community
Mm.
management system of all these lifetime members who love them, and then those people keep all the people who come afterward. So depending on the size of your influence, you don't have to do 500, but just saying bringing in some lifetime people is a good way to preload a community. Bringing in some free people is a good way to preload it. Otherwise, wait. In any of these cases, I would say, as the owner or the face or whatever, really being active for the first while to get people in that habit, and then slowly kind of pulling back until they're conversing on their own.
Those are some great tactics and strategies that you've mentioned, and even just some good numbers to aim for. Like for 100 days, engage for 100 days. Make that a to-do item in your calendar, because you know that you're investing in something for the future. You know that these people will respond, and you know that it'll create a lifeblood, and the lifetime member as well. These people have buy-in; they feel a sense of ownership. You're leaving a bit of money on the table, but it gives you the proof of concept, the initial sales, and then, like you say, those people that have a reason, like a stake in this. Like people tend to really own things in certain respects, right? When you tell someone they own something or that they're a lifetime member of something, if they value it in any way, shape, or form, they will police the community for you, right? Because that's their ownership. This is my house. What are you doing? I'm going to be here for life. I don't want you in here posting this random, this stuff. So that's really, really powerful. So now, would you say that's one of the most important components for retention is community? Is there anything else that we should be aware of?
I would say it is probably the most important. So you've got your content, you've got your community, and there's a lot of different models. So I have sold a subscription membership site where there was no community and there was no ongoing content. Mm-hmm. And still people bought it on subscription and paid on it for years. And it wasn't that I was trying to take advantage of them. It was, hey, at the time we didn't have the parent-child stuff. It was, hey, go through this training, but you're probably going to want to keep it because when you have turnover in your business, for example, you're going to want the new guy trained as well. So,
right.
Basically hang on to it. Your price is locked in. And as more people on your team come in, you can send them through the training as well. So I look at it as kind of how you position it, meaning you don't have to have a community. You don't have to always be creating content. Obviously, those things will help. But the parent-child is another piece to this, especially with B2B, where you can say, look, you're going to have turnover in your customer service. You're going to have turnover in your sales team. Those new people will always need this training because you want your business to be consistent. You want everyone, obviously doing the same thing. So you present a consistent experience to your customers between people, but also over time. And so I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of people who have a lot of, kind of tactics and ninja tricks and so forth. But if you back up and you look at the strategy of it, it's like, well, what do you as a business owner want? Do you really want to be creating content every month? If so, that's totally cool. Go for it, and that will help. But if you don't, figure out why somebody would want to stay. And if it's all the community, really invest, as far as you can that way. But the last one, and this kind of touches back on what you had said, kind of how we started the call, which was why there's so much free information out there. Why would someone not just take the free info versus become a member? And the third C is where you curate. So one of the things that I see as valuable is just kind of not quite providing new content, but saying, hey, this is now outdated, do something else instead. And here it is. So even just pruning and then talking to people about how my goal here is to save you time. I don't want to overwhelm you with more information. I actually want to make your life easier and just give you the essence and distill it down and so forth.
I love that. Yeah, that's excellent. And we also mentioned at the beginning, I'm doing the plug for you, Micah, because I've known you for, we're probably going on somewhere like 10 years or so now. So I know you've got the goods, and I value your friendship and relationship so much. I plugged at your free report, 9 ways to add more value to a membership site without having to create more content. So again, if anyone didn't manage to catch that or didn't write it down, you can go to Memberium, memberium.com right now. And at least when I saw on the homepage, on the bottom, very bottom of the homepage, you'll see their free report. I'm sure if you click around the site, you'll see it in other places as well. And that can give you some other ideas for ways to be valuable without having to make more content. Because there's a lot of different things that you can do. Even things like if you have video or audio content, you don't have to do it. You can hire someone. You can hire VAs overseas or agencies for pennies on the dollar and have them transcribe it, create reports out of it. You can get interns to work for free to help create some of this stuff. Kids that are just looking for a real world experience in a business. There's a lot of different ways to slice it. I know that this is a great PDF, and so if anyone's looking for ways to do that and get out of having to keep up with a production schedule, highly recommend you go get Micah's ebook. Yeah. Micah, this has been such an action-packed, dense, nugget-filled call. I really want to encourage the listeners to go back and listen to this once or twice more. A lot of this was about membership-based businesses, but this almost applies to any type of business in general. Like the stages that you mentioned, you talk about for memberships, but that's even why I asked, is this based on recurring or one-time billings? For a business, your bills are due every month. So even if you're not in a recurring business, you need to be able to get your sales volume up to pay your bills, right? So I just love the stages that you went through because I think that's such a really key and important thing for any business And again, every business would benefit from having a community built around it. A restaurant, a hair salon, even a plumber, like to be part of a community, to a martial arts school, a software tool. I mean, this applies to every type of business out there. So it's just a really good call. I encourage people to listen to it again, take some notes, make the list to do, to delegate, to buy in the next 30 days, to learn more about based on what you've heard. Now, Mike, is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
I don't think so. I mean, I appreciate that we stuck to the fundamentals, because sometimes I get lost in little things. And yeah, I think we kind of hit on some of the fundamentals. So I don't think so.
Well, I love the fundamentals and I learned this from martial arts. And this is because, I mean, I taught martial arts. People that are new to the show, you may not know, but I have a martial arts background, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And one of the things that I learned is at some point in my career, I got really caught up in some of these new fancy techniques and moves that were coming out. But something that really hit home was I remember watching some of these guys at the world-class black belt level championships, and they were winning with basic fundamental stuff that we were learning and teaching to our brand new people in their first month. And Greg Glassman, I do CrossFit, and Greg Glassman's got this great paper he wrote on virtuosity, and he talked about virtue is doing the common uncommonly well. And that's when it kind of clicked for me, because I'd watch and I'm like, these black belts are doing fundamental things so well that other black belts who also know these fundamental things see it coming but can't stop it from happening to them. And so there has to be that not that transparency, there has to be that transcendence where it has to be functional at every stage of business. And that's what I think, like, again, why this call is on fundamentals, but it's what's going to work. Some shiny new thing or AI technology, it might sound great and shiny and new, but the stuff we've talked about today, I mean, this has worked for literally hundreds of years in business. Like minimum viable product, first 10 sales a month, scale your sales to 100, now focus on, like, I just think that what you described in this call would have worked if someone had listened to this 100 years ago and was just getting started, and it'll probably still work 100 years from now. So I just think it was really good information to provide. And I think anyone that's listening to this really needs to get involved. Check out memberium.com. Get some sort of community portal up and running for your business. Any type of business you have, you would definitely benefit from having a community or some sort of training. And even if it's not a membership site for customers, you could still do one for internal. For training your staff. You could do one for training affiliates that market your business. Anytime you've got to train someone in a repeatable method, there's room for a membership site. Micah, you guys have a few different purposes for membership sites. What are they again? You got a list of them, right? Do you remember them all?
So you mean like internal training versus an add-on for clients and all that?
Yeah, the different types of membership sites. Like there's a staff training portal, there's a customer membership site. There's
Gotcha.
Like an affiliate training site. There's one where, what else? Where were they? I know you got them. Hold on, let's load them.
Yeah. So when people ask about like what you can do with it, I like to think of it as anything that requires a login. So yeah, your affiliate has to log in maybe to get their links. I would give them some training along with those links. Your employees, you get them to log in for training. That's a huge, I always say, and I should have touched on this a little bit, but every single business really does need a membership site, because just for your staff, honestly, everyone knows, hey, I should create staff training. Nobody does it. I think partially because they don't know where exactly it would go. So, a membership site for your staff, a membership site for your partners. And what most people miss too is you don't have to be selling content. I would make a membership site, and just like you've said all along here, a community, no matter what type of business it is, I would make a site as a bonus for customers, right? Even the plumber can have some training in there where they have to log in for how to, whatever, snake your own drain or whatever it is.
Yep.
And then they're going to call that plumber back next time versus the next guy in the phone book. So every business needs a membership site. For anyone they interact with, build an area in there for that person. I'm obviously biased, but I really, really believe in that.
Yeah, no, I'm biased too, and I don't even have a membership software tool. So I'm telling my audience members, go check it out. Definitely check it out. And like Micah said, if Memberium seems too complicated, get something else, but you need it in your business. And if you do get stuck or you have any troubles, Micah is the best expert I know of on this topic. So please feel free to reach out to him. memberium.com. Micah, again, thank you so much. I always value your time. I value your intelligence, your wisdom, your education. I value growing with you over these years. And I just am grateful that I can say to my community that I know someone like you and know that they'll be well taken care of. So thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. And hey, I miss you. Yeah, I haven't seen you in person for a long time. So I always love talking to you. It was great catching up, and I hope it was helpful. Thanks for having me on.
You've reached the end of our interview. Now, first, let me thank you for listening. I appreciate and respect you more than you'll ever know. And now I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First, what 3 lessons did you just learn? What 3 aha moments just jumped out at you? Second, what can you implement for yourself and your business in the next 24 hours? Third, what can you give to someone else to help you with, or give them to just do it for you? Whatever it is, remember, taking action is the secret sauce to results. Now, if you think this interview would be helpful for a friend, please give them a link to it. It'll help them and it'll help me too. I'd also like to invite you to help me find out more about the challenges you're facing, your dreams, your goals, and how I can help you overcome what's holding you back. We both do better when we know better, and your success is my success. So please reach out and interact. You can visit our website, bestbusinesscoach.ca for Canada or California, where I'm from and where I'm living. You're welcome to also try out one of our paid programs. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, and pretty much every other social media channel you can think of. You should also subscribe to the podcast, and if you're enjoying them, please leave us a nice review. It really helps. That's all for now. Once again, thank you. Take care of yourself, and remember, the world needs the best business you can build. And I believe in you.
So look, I was privileged enough to sit in the room the other day and listen to Daryl present.
I had the great fortune to spend some time with Daryl Abrinsky during this week, and we had an incredible 2.5-hour presentation from Daryl.
Daryl was amazing. I got so many little nuggets of wisdom.
I hadn't heard Daryl speak before, but what struck me from his presentation was
he's one of these hidden masters in the internet marketing world who's worked on some pretty incredible launches.
Daryl has a ridiculous amount of knowledge.
Daryl Abrinsky's presentation was absolutely great. I really loved
an incredible knowledge of numbers. He is a very articulate, very knowledgeable, very advanced marketer.
He talked a lot about keyword tools and how to research your niche.
So it really created a lot of predictability around moving forwards in our business with the marketing and sales aspect, which is so important to any business to really see it grow.
Where he walks you through step by step
how to judge in detailed form how much money you could potentially make from a market based on AdWords, keyword research, and putting together quite complex Excel spreadsheets.
And what I took away from it is not only understanding your niche market, but also looking at and breaking down and going, am I working with the right niche? Is there enough demand there for me to be able to reach my goals? And doing that hard research.
There's a lot of gurus out there that present you a lot of the why and the what, but they don't necessarily give you the how. And what I really found with Daryl's presentation, there's no holding back. There was no holding back the screens or the curtains. Like, everything was given to really assist us.
His feasibility and due diligence is incredible, and he was able to show us in a really short space of time how to cut through the overwhelm.
You're giving us the exact tools that we can use to test something before we even go to start testing it by spending money on it.
One of the biggest nuggets that I got out of his presentation was that when people pay, they pay attention, and when people pay a lot, they pay a lot of attention. I just love that. I think that's a great way to look at how to price yourself.
And he was a great speaker, lots of energy, and it was really great to spend time with him.
Honestly, phenomenal presentation.
I would love to catch up with him, next time I'm in this part of the world.